Oh, hey Moby, do you want to go play some video games? Alright, well, if you're not gonna play, then can you move, please? Yeah, I know they're a waste of time, but it's summer now, so we can do whatever we want. Dear Tim and Moby, I just finished AP World History, and I was disappointed that there was some content left out. Could you go over some of the information that wasn't in the curriculum? From Lorelei.
Well, there's actually a lot that we can talk about that wasn't covered in AP World History. But we'll start with the ancient time period, which began in 8000 BCE and lasted until 600 BCE. We'll begin with ancient Greek mythology, which began to take form at the beginning of the ancient time period, and continued to thrive throughout the rest of the period. The practice of this Greek culture and mythology reached its pinnacle at 800 BCE, where the Oracle of Delphi also saw use as a means to prophesy the future. The ancient Greeks were very religious and relied on the creation of their gods to explain natural phenomena, aspects of their environment, and their society in general. In Greece, each city-state was said to be protected by one of the 12 Olympians. For instance, both the ancient city-states of Athens and Sparta chose Athena as their guardian.
Well,
they chose to believe in these beings in order to serve as motivation to be a good person, so that life after death would be plentiful. These beings would also aid them in times of need, during their life on Earth. This was arguably the most important part of the ancient Greek culture. It went on to influence several other religions in the area.
yes, exactly like the Romans.
Their polytheistic religion is greatly interwoven with the ideology and divine beings of the Greek religion. Today, references to these same gods and goddesses are widespread in our own culture. To truly understand them, we have to go back and take a look at where they all began. Now, on to the classical time period. Romans and their exquisite architecture often dominate this portion of history, but in the class their achievements are never explicitly covered. The city of Rome housed the most famous and memorable architectural marvel of classical Rome, in the form of the Roman Colosseum. Finished in 80 CE, it was the largest amphitheater of the time. Countless gladiator fights, exotic animal events, and, as crazy as it may seem, even mock naval engagements of previous wars were presented to numerous fans and bread-hungry peasants.
No, not really.
Most of the entertainment that took place at the Colosseum was very violent. This violence spurred attention and attracted fans to the events. The Colosseum was built, then, to appeal to the masses of people. The Colosseum was a form of government-mandated entertainment, which kept the people happy and complying. Its significance was widespread. It was the largest form of entertainment ever created during this time, defining much of this time's period's culture and architecture. The influence of the Colosseum has implanted itself from generation after generation. From stadium seating, sports events, and popular movie scenes, they all often find inspiration from this wonder of architecture of the classical world. The post-classical era saw the Dark Ages envelop much of Europe, bringing the continent into virtually ceaseless periods of warfare. The most famous of these conflicts is the 100 Years' War. This clash between France and England took actually a little over 100 years to conclude. From 1337 to 1453 CE, this war raged on, though small intermissions were taken between 1360 and 1369 and between 1389 to 1415.
Well,
The conflict between the two revolved around the possession of a French province called the Duchy of Guyenne, and the kings of England, who were the closest relatives to the last Capetian king, Charles IV, claimed the crown of France. In essence, the war was a giant attempt of England's to take power from France. In the beginning of the war, the English were able to, against the odds, strike decisive victories against the much larger and better equipped French army. The French were forced to sign a treaty, but the English resumed the war. England again dominated the French in battle, but, with the help of Joan of Arc, the French were able to lift the siege of Orleans and liberate much of France. The English eventually pulled out, realizing the French were too strong to confront directly. The conflict's significance is great. It was the major conflict of the time, sparking a lasting rivalry between England and France for the future. Additionally, 3.5 million people died, contributing to this era's common name, the Dark Ages. Now, on to the next topic, the discovery of America. Everybody loves to hear the story of Christopher Columbus discovering America, but many don't know the true story about his journey. Christopher Columbus was an Italian explorer and navigator who was determined to find a direct water route west from Europe to the Indies. This water route would make trade from Europe to Asia much easier, and it would also prove that the world was round, unlike how many explorers had previously believed it to be.
Sadly,
Christopher Columbus never did find a direct route from Europe to the Indies, as he had hoped, but what he did find was the Americas. Christopher Columbus was funded by the King and Queen of Spain to set out on his journey across the Atlantic in 1492. He left Europe with 3 ships, the Niña, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria, as well as numerous crew members who would assist him along his journey. However, Columbus had underestimated the size of the world, meaning that the voyage took much longer than expected. Christopher Columbus's voyage across the Atlantic Ocean lasted 2 months until Columbus and his crew finally landed on an island in the Bahamas, which they believed to be Asia. Once he had reached the Americas, he noticed the beauty of the island, and he found small amounts of gold, as well as native birds and flowers that he would eventually take back to Spain.
no, that's not all that he did.
He also captured some of the native people so that he could bring them back to Spain with him. The final thing he did before he returned to Spain was that he left 39 of his men to form a Spanish colony on the island, so that the Spanish would have some control over this new American island. This event was one of the most significant in the history of the world, simply because of the fact that it was the discovery of the New World. This discovery meant that there was plenty of land to be colonized by European civilizations. These colonies also led to new conflicts within the New World. Also, this discovery resulted in the formation in the United States of America, which would soon prove to be one of the most powerful nations in the world. The modern time period was a very important time spanning world history. It was during this time period that many new nations began to form, as well as become more powerful. However, one nation that was never discussed was Australia. Australia was discovered by a British explorer by the name of James Cook. Cook set out in June of 1769 to observe the transit of Venus across the sun. His travels led him first to New Zealand, where him and his crew spent the following 6 months mapping out the island and then continuing west. After leaving New Zealand, they soon landed upon the east coast of Australia, called Botany Bay. When Cook and his crew arrived in Australia, they were not welcomed by the native Australians, and were soon driven out by them. This, however, did not stop them from exploring other parts of the land.
First of all,
The British were always wanting more land, so they used Australia as a place to colonize and form new territories upon. Secondly, the British used Australia as a place to exile criminals and other delinquents. The use of Australia as a place to exile criminals was the main use of the new land, but Britain was still eager to establish permanent colonies in Australia. The discovery of Australia is significant because of how Australia has evolved into the country that it is today. Australia has a great impact on the world from an economic view, and its discovery influenced more cultural diffusion between Europe and the East. This spread of culture has largely shaped the history of the country, and led the growth that Australia has experienced since it was discovered less than 300 years ago. Finally, we have the contemporary time period, where technology advanced beyond what any previous civilizations had ever imagined. Transportation, communication, architecture, and several other technologies all improved significantly during the 20th century. One of the most important technological advancements of the era was the development of the telephone. Telephones had always existed, but they were revolutionized during the late 1900s when the mobile phone was invented. The creation of the mobile phone now meant that people could communicate with each other anywhere and anytime. However, the one company that took it into their own hands to revolutionize the phone, as well as technology as we know it today, was Apple. In 1976, Steve Jobs founded Apple in Cupertino, California, which soon became the largest technological company in the world. His company was created with the goal of making better technology for the people.
Apple actually did a lot of things.
They created new and improved smartphones with apps that added multiple different uses to the phone, as well as it allowed for faster communication. They also created mobile computers, known today as laptops, using new advanced technology that allowed the computer to run faster than ever before. Apple has also created several other products, from music devices to watches, that have all changed the society that we live in today. Apple being founded is a very significant part of our history today because it has changed the way that we communicate, and it has allowed our society to have access to unlimited information. Because of these creations, our society is much more advanced and informed. Apple has truly made its mark on the world today.
Well, that's all the important stuff, don't you think, Moby? Good to know you agree. Now that I'm done explaining things, though, can you please get out of the way? What? Still more work to do. Oh, summer reading, right. I'll never beat this game.